If you want him, come and claim him.
One of the most iconic lines in the trilogy. Arwen on a white horse, 9 Nazgûl behind her, a dying Frodo in her arms, the river rising at her command. Peter Jackson invented it. Not one word of that scene exists in Tolkien's book. Not the race, not the challenge, not Arwen calling the flood. The entire sequence was constructed by the filmmakers to give Arwen a role in the story early enough to justify her importance later. It is well done. It is dramatically effective. It replaced one of the most extraordinary characters in the entire mythology. A being so ancient and so powerful that without him, the story of Middle-earth ends 3,000 years before Frodo was born. His name is Glorfindel, and most fans have never heard of him. The film establishes the rescue efficiently. Aragorn finds the wounded Frodo near the Trollshaw ruins. An elf appears on a white horse. She assesses the situation immediately.
He's fading. He's not going to last. We must get him to my father.
She takes Frodo onto her horse, races 9 Ringwraiths across the wild country, and arrives at the Ford of Bruinen. She turns and challenges the full host of the Nazgûl.
If you want him, come and claim him.
The waters rise. The Nazgûl are destroyed. Frodo loses consciousness.
What grace is given me? Let it pass to him. Let him be spared.
Beautiful, earned, and constructed almost entirely from scratch. In the book, Arwen is in Rivendell when Frodo arrives. She had no part in getting him there. The horse, the ford, the flood, all of it belongs to someone else entirely. On the road to Rivendell, with black riders closing in from every direction and Frodo fading from the Morgul wound, Aragorn hears hoofbeats from the west. An elf lord rides toward them out of the fading light. Tolkien describes him with the kind of precision he reserves for beings who carry real weight in the world.
He was tall and straight. His hair was of shining gold. His face fair and young and fearless and full of joy. His eyes were bright and keen, and his voice like music. On his brow sat wisdom, and in his hand was strength. The light of stars was in his bright eyes, gray and clear. So bright was his light in the shadows of evening that the faces of the others were lit up as by the reflection of a fire.
The hobbits feel something in his presence they cannot name. Something older than the road, older than the Shire, older than anything they have ever been near. Aragorn, who does not impress easily, greets Glorfindel with unmistakable relief. He is glad Glorfindel came. He knows what Glorfindel is, and he knows what that means for the 9 things hunting them. To understand Glorfindel, you go back to the First Age, 3,000 years before the War of the Ring, before Sauron, before the Rings of Power, before everything familiar. In those ancient days, there was a hidden city called Gondolin, the most beautiful and most secret city in the history of Middle-earth, concealed inside a ring of mountains so complete that Morgoth, the original Dark Lord, whom Sauron himself served as lieutenant, could not find it for centuries. Glorfindel was the lord of the House of the Golden Flower, one of the great noble houses of Gondolin. When Morgoth finally found the city, he destroyed it in a single night of fire and shadow. The survivors fled through a mountain pass. In that pass, a Balrog found them, the same order of being Gandalf faced on the bridge of Khazad-dûm.
You shall not pass!
That is Gandalf's story. Glorfindel's came first. He fought the Balrog in the pass to give the refugees time to escape. He killed it, and the dying creature dragged him from the cliff as it fell. He died saving his people. His body went with the Balrog into the abyss, and then the Valar sent him back. Not immediately, not without ceremony. He was taken to Valinor, the Blessed Realm, the home of the angelic powers who shaped the world. He was given a new body, his identity restored, his name returned. Then he was sent back to Middle-earth in the Third Age with a specific purpose: to serve as one of the instruments of resistance against Sauron in the long war to come. Tolkien is precise about what passing through death and returning from Valinor means for a being. They come back changed. They carry something they did not carry before: a radiance, a quality of the Blessed Realm itself that exists in them alongside everything else they were. Gandalf experienced this when he was returned after his death in Moria.
I am Gandalf the White, and I come back to you now at the turn of the tide.
Glorfindel had that same quality 3,000 years before Gandalf, in greater measure, because Gandalf was sent to Middle-earth constrained, forbidden from using his full power so that men would find their own courage. Glorfindel was returned with no such restriction. He blazed, openly, completely. Here is the concept the film loses entirely. The Nazgûl are beings that exist simultaneously in the physical world and in what Tolkien calls the wraith-world, the unseen plane of existence that runs alongside the visible one. It is why their presence makes horses bolt and soldiers go mad. It is why ordinary weapons cannot harm them.
They are the Nazgûl, Ringwraiths, neither living nor dead. At all times they feel the presence of the ring, drawn to the power of the one. They will never stop hunting you.
When Frodo puts on the ring, he enters their world. He sees them as they truly are, gray-robed figures with white hair and pale, merciless faces. That is the wraith-world. That is where they are most themselves. And when Frodo looks at Glorfindel from inside that world, Tolkien writes this:
Then Frodo saw before him, standing in the road, a shining figure, so bright that it was difficult to look at. In the wraith-world, Glorfindel shone as if on fire, blazing with a white radiance. The black riders wavered. Even their horses flinched and swerved. For Glorfindel stood in both worlds at once, seen and unseen. And in the world of shadow he was as a flame against the dark. His light was not reflected but original. The light of a place the Nazgûl had abandoned and could never reach again.
The Ringwraiths had surrendered their lives for power and become hollow, sustained across 3,000 years by Sauron's will, stretched so thin they were barely there at all. They inhabited the wraith-world as darkness inhabits darkness. Glorfindel had passed through death and returned carrying Valinor's fire in him. They could not approach it. The Nazgûl were once men.
They were once men, great kings of men. Then Sauron the Deceiver gave to them 9 rings of power.
They chose power over mortality. They clung to existence past the natural end of their lives, sustained by a dark ring, fading over centuries until nothing remained of who they were. They are everything Tolkien found most tragic about the desire for immortality, life that has continued so long past its proper end that it has become indistinguishable from death. Glorfindel chose the opposite at every point. He died at the right moment for the right reason. He accepted mortality, passed through it completely, and was restored by the highest powers in the mythology with something the 9 kings surrendered the moment they took their rings. That quality, carried back from Valinor, sitting in him like a fire, is precisely what the Nazgûl cannot withstand. They do not fear Glorfindel because he is militarily powerful, though he is. They fear him because he is the living proof of everything they gave away. Now the specific difference between the book and the film, and it matters more than any other detail. In the film, Arwen races alongside Frodo to the ford, challenges the Nazgûl from the water, and calls the flood herself. In the book, Glorfindel puts Frodo on his horse, gives the horse a command in Elvish, and tells Frodo one thing: if danger comes, ride on, do not wait. Then, Glorfindel stays on the road. Tolkien writes it without drama.
"Ride on! Ride on!" cried Glorfindel, and then he called to the horse in the Elvish tongue, Noro lim, Asphaloth. At once the white horse sprang away and sped like the wind along the last lap of the road. At the same moment, the black horses of the Nazgûl leaped from the bank and charged in pursuit. But Glorfindel stood in the road and let them pass. And as they passed, he turned and strode after them. And of his goings in that hour, Tolkien sets down nothing more.
1 elf lord, 9 Nazgûl. He stayed. The flood was called by Elrond from Rivendell, ancient power rooted in that valley for 3,000 years. Glorfindel bought the time for that power to work, standing alone on the bank, while a wounded hobbit carrying the fate of the world rode ahead without him. The film gave Frodo a companion. Tolkien gave him a guardian who stayed behind. Here is the thread nobody talks about. 1,400 years before the events of The Lord of the Rings, the Witch King of Angmar, the same Nazgûl who breaks the gate of Minas Tirith, who Gandalf holds at the threshold, who Éowyn kills on the Pelennor Fields, was defeated in battle in the north and fled. Men wanted to pursue him. One voice called out a warning, Glorfindel's voice. He said,
Do not pursue him. He will not return to this land. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall. These words many remembered, but Éowyn was angry, desiring only to be avenged for his disgrace. And whether for that reason, or because the terror of the Witch King was still on him, his horse could not be brought to turn again to follow after his master's enemy.
Glorfindel spoke the prophecy that Éowyn fulfilled on the Pelennor Fields. 14 centuries before she put a blade through the Witch King's face, an elf lord looked at that same creature and told the world his doom was coming, and that no man would deliver it. The same being who held the Ford of Bruinen to protect Frodo had already looked at the Witch King with full knowledge of how his story ended, spoken it aloud, and let him go. This is a single unbroken thread running from the first age through the third. One life, one purpose, placed at every critical point in the story with perfect timing. The film's choice was understandable. Glorfindel appears in one chapter and is never mentioned again by name in the narrative. Arwen needed establishing. The Ford sequence works regardless of who rides it, but the replacement is precise in what it costs. It costs the wraith-world concept entirely. The idea that some beings carry a light that evil cannot approach, that death passed through, with honor returns you carrying something darkness cannot touch. It costs the dramatic image of one elf staying behind on the road while a wounded hobbit rides ahead alone. It collapses the most ancient thread in the story, Glorfindel's prophecy connecting the Ford to the Pelennor, into a gap most viewers never notice. And it replaces a being who returned from death carrying Valinor's fire with a love story, however beautiful. The film gives you the challenge at the Ford. A woman on a white horse, 9 shadows, the water rising. It earns the moment. Tolkien's version is older and stranger. No dramatic defiance shouted at the water's edge. No borrowed grace passed from elf to dying hobbit. A blazing figure standing on a road while 9 hollow kings wavered in the dark because they could not approach what he carried in him. They had surrendered the light for power. He died to keep it, went to the place it came from, and came back with more of it than he had before.
I do not fear them.
Arwen says that in the film. It is a statement of courage. Glorfindel feared nothing because there was nothing in him for the Nazgûl to reach. The movies gave Frodo Arwen's courage. Tolkien gave him a dead man's light.